I'm Janusz Lewiński and you're watching TVP World Talks. Hungary's nationwide referendum on Ukraine's EU accession is now drawing to a close, with Viktor Orbán's government heavily invested in narratives painting Kyiv's EU bid as a grave threat to the Hungarian economy, while the opposition largely speaking out in favour of the embattled country joining the bloc. The vote is set to become a political battleground between Hungary's major political forces. How is the general public in Hungary likely to respond, and what impact will it have on the rest of the European Union? Joining us now is Péter Balázs, former European Commissioner and Minister of Foreign Affairs of Hungary. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Good morning.
So let's begin with the status of this referendum. Is it binding in any way, or is it simply consultative in nature? Just to clarify, so that we know what the stakes are.
Well, first of all, we know well that the EU accession of Ukraine is not on the agenda of the European Union now in any form. It could be a remote perspective for Ukraine, but not a daily decision, certainly not for the coming EU summit meeting next week. Now, the whole scenario is an internal political game of Mr. Orbán and his party, and it is visible that the Fidesz party, since a rather long time of governing, 15 years, now is declining, and a new challenger is coming up in the form of the TISA party and his leader, Péter Balázs. Now, Mr. Orbán tries to apply his traditional method, creating a conflict and coming out as a winner from this conflict. And for the time being, he has two enemies, in quotation marks. One is Ukraine, and the other one is the Budapest pride. Now, Ukraine is an important neighbor of Hungary, but it is well known that since the beginning, the actual Hungarian government is much more in favor of the Russian side and not supporting the Ukrainian side. So this referendum has no binding power whatsoever. This is listing or updating the supporters of the government party, and it is hardly controllable who is voting and who is not. You can fill out the questionnaire on internet, and nobody can control whether you have done it once, twice, or 10 times. Mr. Orbán is collecting the camp of his supporters.
So basically, even if it went in a way that Mr. Orbán didn't plan, he could disregard it, saying, well, okay, so this is, what the result is, but this was consultative in nature anyway. Now, we don't really seem to have too many polls indicating what the results could be. Why is that so? And are there any indications whether the results are going to go this way or that, given that the entire voting process is now coming to a close?
Well, first of all, this government has a very strong majority in the parliament, 2/3, and can do anything it wants. It doesn't need any public opinion poll or any referendum to support its position. But this is, as I said, an internal political maneuver to strengthen the cohesion of the government side, to bring up the voters and to offer an opportunity to express their support for the government, which is really declining. In the last days, we have seen opinion polls, and the advantage of the opposition is between 10 and 15% on the Fidesz party. So this is one traditional trick of Mr. Orbán. In the past, he had some more symbolic enemies, like Brussels in quotation marks, whatever it means. Usually, this is a synonym for the European Union without naming it's the Commission, European Parliament, or anybody else, or the migrants. We haven't got migrants in Hungary at all. But this was another threat, another danger. And now, as it was mentioned in this program as well, the Budapest pride is the other enemy, and there is a political game between the government and the capital, Budapest, because Budapest is organizing a day of freedom for next Saturday, the 28th of June, and the government has forbidden, it's exactly the police has forbidden this demonstration. Now we are in a legal dispute in Budapest whether this Budapest Pride can take place or not.
So what you're saying is that the government is using this as another battleground, and indeed is actually conflating these narratives by presenting President Zelensky alongside various European officials and saying, don't let them decide, let the Hungarian people take matters into their own hands, their future belongs to them and not the European elites and all that. Do you think this narrative is likely to work, given that you said that the support for the Fidesz party is now declining? Could this be reflected in the results of the referendum, or is it so tightly controlled, as you also suggested, that it might actually still go in Mr. Orbán's favor?
Well, the narratives behind this referendum on the side of the government is false. There are big issues like saying that as if Ukraine would join the European Union tomorrow. They say that hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians would come to Hungary to take the jobs of Hungarians. Orbán says that our money would be transferred to Ukraine. So all the supports in the agriculture policy, in the cohesion policy, would be channeled to the Ukraine instead of Hungary. They are speaking about the competition of Ukrainian agriculture products, fertilizers, and so on, going as far as increasing criminality originating from Ukraine. So all this is fake and threatening people with an immediate effect. Now, what is the outcome of this referendum for Mr. Orbán and his government? They are counting the number of people who are responding to this informal and unbinding referendum. Orbán has pretended this morning in the state radio that the number is around 2 million people. So this is more or less the electorate of Orbán. This is the number of votes, a bit more perhaps, what he needs in order to maintain, through a forced election law in Hungary, a two-thirds majority in the parliament.
So he also has actually, or one of his aides has given a massive figure concerning accession of Ukraine to the European Union. He suggested that it would cost the community €2,500 billion. Do these calculations have any sort of relation to actual reality? One of the major arguments that was given that the reconstruction process would be very expensive indeed, and that the EU would actually be footing the bill.
Of course, each and every enlargement of the EU has some budgetary consequences. But let me underline once again that this issue is not for tomorrow. Ukraine should go a very long way in order to comply with all the requirements of membership. And reasonable people in Hungary recall that even our very rapid accession, together with Poland and some other countries of the region, took years, and with a very strong support on behalf of the European Union, with very favorable international conditions. We didn't have any opponent of our accession on behalf of Russia or any other country. We had a very strong home support of the public opinion. So even so, it took 10 years. So for Ukraine, it would be at least 10 years or even more. This is not a question for tomorrow. There will be some course, but the EU is the best prepared for discussing such issues with the full participation of all the member states and with equal voting rights for getting a unanimous decision about any new member European Union.
Some member states are suggesting that this should be an accelerated process. I believe the Baltic states, for example, advocating for Ukraine's rapid accession. Wouldn't it be the case that if Ukraine was given a very long time frame in the current situation, that this would make the process meaningless? Because if it would be the endless waiting room, something we've seen, for example, in the Balkan states, then such a distant perspective would actually not have a major impact on Ukraine's fate here and now. And Ukraine does need this support, this perspective of actually joining the community of European nations, as opposed to being drawn back into the orbit of Moscow.
I think it is already an accelerated process. What we can see, just look at the top-level meetings where President Zelensky is a regular participant. He attended the G7 meeting in Canada. He is a regular guest at NATO summit meetings. He is regularly invited to EU European Council meetings. So it hasn't happened in the past that a candidate is there sitting in the circle of EU members, including the biggest EU members. So the political incorporation of Ukraine is already happening before our eyes. I think what Ukraine needs the most is a strong political perspective, that you have for Europe, yes, you have your place in Europe. And then the rest, which is mostly technical, the 35 chapters with a lot of nitty-gritties, what we have done in our accession process could wait for some time. The details of environment protection or consumer protection or the quality of drinking water or the noise level of airports and many other issues which were on our agenda could be a bit postponed because Ukraine is in war. Ukraine needs, first of all, a ceasefire, then peace, then reconstruction, but the political perspective should go first. And that's what I understand by accelerated rapprochement of Ukraine to the EU. Yes, you have your perspective. You are our partner. You are participating in our discussions. And later on, we will have time to discuss the rest, all the technical details.
Péter Balázs was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome.
And I'm Janusz Lewiński. You're watching TVP World. Please do stay with us.